Charles, there was a recent article that came out that's nothing new to us who are in Texas or in Houston about the 10 most dangerous neighborhoods in the Houston area, third or fourth largest city in America, according to some. Charles, to be honest with you, man, it's nothing new to hear that about Sunnyside, about Sharpstown, Greens Point, Southwest Houston. We all know that crime has been an ongoing problem for generations and decades in these economically challenged communities, many of them poor, impoverished communities. I grew up in Sunnyside. I lived the crime in Sunnyside. I experienced it on a daily basis. I watched my friends go to jail, watched my classmates get killed. I watched my little brother be murdered in Sunnyside. It's always been a problem, and what I believe the problem can only be fixed is when we get politicians that are absolutely beholden to the people that they represent. We have too many politicians that represent poor communities that are seeking financial resources from people outside of the community. Therefore, they're neglecting giving the community the type of attention that it deserves and needs. Those underdeserved communities need resources, they need investment, and they need to begin to hold people accountable for a lot of activity that we're not holding people accountable for. If we do that, Charles, I think we begin to stem the tide of the crime rate in the black community in those impoverished areas, because to be honest with you, out of all of those 10 areas, they're either black and Hispanic areas that was in that story. None of these are white areas. We just got to be real about it. So what is it that's going on within our communities, both black and brown, that we need to come together and fix and be honest about so that we can change and stem the tide of this crime?
Well, I mean, we don't have honest conversation in America. If you turn on the news media, the only time you see race described in any sort of criminal act is when it's a white actor, right? That is the new media rule of not propagating hateful narratives, but of course it's contravened by the data. But that doesn't speak, and that's the real problem, it's the racist problem, and the bigots on the other side of it, doesn't in any way speak to the content of the character of people that aren't criminals, no matter what their complexion is, right? And you talk about neighborhoods, well, they're also very poor neighborhoods, but it is true that when you look at very poor white neighborhoods, you're still not seeing the extent of crime that you see in middle-class neighborhoods of color, right? So we got to figure out what's going on, what the legacy of oppression, the outsized population from other countries. We don't know, but no one wants to have those uncomfortable conversations. But I think we can avoid the whole thing and say, look, we just need to start, protecting people from victim crime again. There was a horrible narrative series. I'm not a big Reddit guy, right? Because I'm old. But Reddit, they've got a subreddit that is Houston. Okay, it's a website where people talk about stuff largely anonymously, right? And they had someone post something about a bad experience they had calling HPD's dispatch. And then it was filled with a litany of other people having horrible experiences, just horrible experiences of non-responsiveness. We all remember in 2016 the dispatcher that was hanging up on people and got filed on for it. I think it starts with returning to this paradigm of addressing crime in Houston, because yes, it's been going on for years. But if you called the police about a robbery in the 90s, the cops showed up.
I'll be honest with you, Charles.
They don't show up now.
But even when we had racist administrations in the city of Houston, in Harris County, that were absolutely racist, documented racist.
I'm curious who?
Chuck Rosenthal.
Okay.
When he was over the Harris County DA's office.
And
he was over the Harris County DA's office, and he was the head policeman enforcer in Harris County that determined who was charged, who was indicted, who was prosecuted. Right. And he was an absolute racist. The emails came out proving it.
Quanell, talk about those emails. I hate to tell you aside, but it's a stream so we can ramble. I was actually the police procedure expert. So those emails were released as a part of a lawsuit. Right? And it was a lawsuit filed by two brothers who were
Ibarra brothers.
Right.
Represented by Lloyd Kelly.
Right. Who lived next door to a home that was being investigated for being in the narcotics trafficking, and they became upset because two little girls, or a handful of children, were outside without proper cold weather clothing on in the winter. And it led to an interaction. One of the two brothers was going to University of North Carolina, a brilliant young man. But anyhow, those emails came out during the discovery process, and most people didn't see them, right? They were sealed. I had access to them because Kelly had hired me to be the expert witness. And in fact, the case settled while I was in the hallway waiting to testify against the narcotics task force that did it. Horrible story. And absolutely, you're right. Horrible stuff. The way you talk about people secretly, privately, really defines how you
What
feel
you really
about
think.
people.
Exactly.
And that man had absolutely no business stewarding it. But I wouldn't call him. He was in control of a lot of decision making, I guess, as the elected ivory tower official. But I wouldn't call him in control of the city or the police department, right? And that's
No, the Harris County District Attorney, in my opinion, is the most powerful person in the county.
okay.
If we're going to be honest.
Well, you want to talk
And-
about that? We're watching our current Harris County DA.
We'll get to that one.
Okay.
But the point I'm trying to make is this. You know something I've never said publicly, Charles, but I'm going to say now? This is the truth.
Are you normally
Whatever-
lying, but you're telling the truth now?
I never said this, what I'm about to
Okay.
say.
Okay.
I've never said this, but it's the truth.
Right.
Whenever I've held a protest or a press conference about a white person committing a violent crime against a black person, the media gave it heavy coverage.
Oh, yeah.
But if I was doing a press conference about black on black crime,
Nobody cared.
very few outlets would ever show up, and those who showed up may never have given any attention. I'm being honest with you.
Right.
I can lay out activists.
It used to be the difference, right?
I can
The
lay
opposite.
out. I can lay out activists who will tell you right now that whenever we led protests about white people committing crime against a black person or a white cop against a black victim, heavy coverage. But if we went out and was dealing with a black on black crime issue, we got very little coverage. Sometimes no coverage at all.
So in the 80s or 90s, we were both growing up in the 80s and graduated high school in 90. But in the 80s and 90s, the media attention loved to sensationalize black violent offenders when you had white victims, right? And they used all sort of coded language, the thugs, ghetto. It was all just trying to mask using, racist pejoratives.
Right.
And they made those words into racist pejoratives.
Racist
What we saw
tropes,
about
words.
5-6 years ago, we saw a shift in published media policy to suppress race when it is a bad actor who is African American or Latin, a person of color, because you don't want to perpetuate harmful narratives. That was the language used. So what they do now, and it's across the board, and it's despicable, is they only bold headline it when they can, because the whole argument is white people bad now. That's the tolerable bigotry of the day.
Well, it's
And
not
we
a
saw
lie.
Well, it is a lie. And I mean, you saw that with earlier this week with Jamel Hill, the journalist, when
The sports
Claudine,
journalist.
What?
The sports
Right.
journalist.
Which, I mean, she's a journalist. She's
Former
journalist.
ESPN
Right.
journalist.
But so when Claudine Gay, the president of Harvard, got fired, you saw a bunch of far right, probably a bunch of racists celebrating it on Twitter. But you also saw people that were horrified by her tacit approval of violent anti-Semitism, and people that were discouraged by her plagiarism and other things were also more involved than they should. But Jamel Hill, her response was that white people generally have not supported merit, so why do we support merit now? And then just all, and speaking holistically about white people and black people, saying black people always just wanted to be judged by merit and weren't. But you can't do that, right? You can't speak holistically about any group of people that only share immutable characteristics.
But she had some fact to what she
But
said,
doesn't have any,
Charles.
what she's saying is all black people good, all white people
That's
bad.
not what she
That
said.
was exactly
No,
her point.
what she's saying is this, from a black perspective, what she's saying. Black people in the 80s and the 70s, a little bit in the 90s, our parents always said to us and grandparents, you got to be twice as good. You got to work twice as hard.
How do you
gotta be
know what
twice as
all
smart.
black parents told
Because
children?
it was a cultural practice in the black community
Okay.
of telling black kids, if you're going to be a ditch digger, you got to be the best ditch digger that can be
Okay.
out there. The bottom line is, Charles.
We'll agree the opposite is true
Charles,
now, right?
No.
We'll agree when
What
applying to
what she
colleges,
is saying,
the opposite
no,
is true.
You're wrong. What she is saying is this. For so long, black achievement academically was never appreciated in America. Even when we were qualified positions through academic achievement, tenure, or work-related history, using that as an example. Still, we were never given the same equal access to positions as our white counterparts. So what she's saying is if we always based it on merit, well then you would have facts. But she's saying it was not always based on merit because many African Americans who were absolutely academically qualified, had all of the credentials, were never given equal access as what their white counterparts with lesser credentials.
Okay.
And statistically, it was proven that, look it up, that a black person with a college degree, their salary in the workforce was equal to a white person who finished high school.
There's absolutely no argument from me that this nation was marred by horrible institutionalized racism for centuries, right? However, if we talk about higher education, we talk about Harvard. Since the 70s, Harvard has employed aggressive affirmative action that reached a crescendo in the last few years where they are majority minority classes, even though that clearly statistically makes it very clear that they're discriminating against white applicants and are overwhelmingly discriminating against Asian applicants. But when Jamel Hill says white people didn't want merit and black people always just wanted to be judged by their merit, she is at the fundamentalist root saying right now today that black people bad, black people good, white people bad.
I disagree with that.
That's
not what I'm hearing.
But here's the truth, right? When you talk about white people, and you talk about white people not being judged by their merit, you are talking about rich, wealthy, wealth-privileged white people, people who were legacy, people who had access to all this, people that went to boarding schools, people with all the money in the world. And when you talk about white people like that, you're ignoring the fact that in aggregate numbers, there are more white people in poverty than any other race in this country.
Because there are more white people in this country than other race.
But there are plenty of white people that grew up with no privilege, right? And this nonsense that your privilege stems from your color. The truth is, when you look at a per capita basis, there are more white people that have economic privilege than there are black people that have economic privilege because we have wealth disparities. But in this day and age, right now in America, the media only talks about it when it's a white bad guy because they push the narrative of the white people evil. Now, hold on. Claudine Gay and her ilk have said, hey, you can be far less accomplished academically and you will get admitted and promoted and tenured at an incredibly higher rate because some other people in yesteryear did bad things. And it worked fine for her until it became clear that she didn't care about anti-Semitism, and more importantly, that she was a plagiarist. And there's no walking around being a plagiarist. And there was always a mistake, it was this, it was that. I've been to Harvard. They make very clear to you what plagiarism is and the consequences for it.
She didn't lose
There's
her
an
job.
honor code.
She didn't lose her job
She's
because
keeping
of
$900,000 a
anti-Semitism.
year. She didn't lose anything.
But wait a minute.
She's keeping her damn money.
But she didn't lose her job based on the anti-Semitism and insensitivity, the allegation of
She should have.
But that's not why she lost her job.
Well, you're right, because
she lost her job because of the issues of plagiarism.
Right. But she didn't lose her job, much like the University of Pennsylvania, that white woman lost her job. She didn't lose her job because of modern political correctness. And there was very clear talk. In fact, I've read that Obama interceded on her behalf.
And I have no problem with that.
And if she was a white woman, she'd have been fired the next day.
That's a lie.
And it's absolutely true.
Because where's the white woman? The white woman from MIT, she ain't been fired.
Hey, we're not having honest conversations.
So stop. The white woman from MIT, she ain't been fired.
Absolutely.
And they all three was on Capitol Hill.
MIT
and they were targeted.
Has not been threatened with the type of loss of donations that both Penn and
So she was fired because the university would lose money, but not because she stood for the truth.
Well, what was the truth that she stood for?
The truth is this.
I'd love to hear
She's not anti-Semitic.
I didn't say she was.
And the point
she
that
was
they were making.
Tolerating it on campus.
No, this is what she was tolerating. She was tolerating people's right to freedom of speech and expression.
That's not it. Violence.
That's what she was tolerating.
Violence. First of all, Harvard has been ranked for over a decade as being the most unfriendly university
she never tolerated
to free
physical
speech.
violence against any students.
When I was at Harvard, there are literally people blocking access to a classroom chanting about anti-Israel, okay? There's nothing new about it. The difference is that now they are brazenly threatening and violent, and we had Jewish students across this country.
Like Trump supporters.
There's absolutely no relationship.
It sounds like Trump supporters
the disruptions, yeah. So did Trump supporters?
They do the same thing to black folk.
Did they shut down freeways for people trying to travel for the holidays? You were okay
No,
with
they
that?
marched around. They marched around minority neighborhoods carrying tiki torches.
Actually,
to resemble the goddamn Ku Klux Klan.
Actually, that happened in Charlottesville.
Yeah.
And there was a massive police response.
And they walked around chanting. Racist slogans and racist tropes.
Okay, if you are okay, and I am, with free speech
And I am.
peaceful assembly. Okay, you also recognize that peaceful assembly doesn't mean shutting down people's ability to get home to their kids for the holidays. Peaceful assembly does not involve getting in people's faces.
So then
and
Dr. King
threatening
was
them.
wrong.
Okay, actually, Dr. King had marches. There was nothing. It was
And-
not.
nope.
It was not designed
Nope.
to disrupt
Dr.
and
King
destroy.
had sit-ins where they disrupted
Okay.
businesses and refused to leave if they were
Well,
not
you're
served,
talking about
and they were arrested.
You're talking about
They were charged
businesses
with breaking the
that
law,
okay.
and they were they put in
And you're
jail.
first of all,
so was
it
Dr.
was
King
criminal
wrong?
trespass, and he got
Was he
arrested.
wrong?
No, he was right.
All right,
because
then.
Jim Crow was
History
horrible.
vindicated him.
But here's
History
the thing.
vindicated him.
Okay, so
those who are
people
protesting
that
today
are celebrating
and shutting
Hamas,
down roads to airports,
those people are
history will
demanding
vindicate
Sharia.
them also.
History will vindicate those demanding Sharia in America. History will
That's
vindicate
not what
those
they're
demanding
demanding.
death to Jews in America.
That's
History
not
will
what they're
vindicate those
demanding.
people that want to tear down this country. I saw an
History
interesting
will
comment
vindicate those who
about
are
the
calling
radicals.
for a ceasefire in Palestine.
And I would,
History will vindicate
that's why
that
they're
those who believe in a two-state
celebrating October
solution
7th.
were right about
Here's
what's
the
taking
thing.
place in Israel
Claudine
and Palestine.
Gay did not protect Jewish students on campus who were being threatened and assaulted. And in fact, she went as far as to say that it shouldn't happen. And she acted like she didn't have an understanding of free speech that you
America
apparently
still
don't
does not have a history of protecting black students on predominantly white campuses right now today.
I get that you want to point the finger
White
elsewhere.
black
but
students still suffer the same type of
absolutely-
harassment
that's-
on predominantly white campuses right now today.
That's absolutely not true.
Oh, my
you know that you're lying through your
No,
teeth.
I'm telling the absolute truth.
Okay. And
There are
the truth
black
is-
students who suffer harassment and intimidation on predominantly white campuses right now to this day
Okay.
at college universities.
So you think
and they have failed to still protect
you
them.
think it's, so we live in America where if someone suffers a racialized attack, in fact, and we live in America where we hear about hoax attack after hoax attack after hoax attack after hoax attack, but the media don't want to talk about it. We don't live in America.
then she go to jail.
We don't live in America.
And the black woman went to jail.
We don't
And
live
Jesse Smollett,
in
who
America
made that lie up,
where if
the appeals
someone
court overturned
suffers
him,
a
he going to
racist
jail.
attack on a college campus, if a black person suffers a racist attack on a college campus, it is what you're sitting in that chair and lying and saying nobody cares. In fact, the opposite. In fact, it'll
I
be
didn't
on the
say
front
that.
page of every
I didn't
newspaper in
say
America.
that.
And
I
it was
didn't say
exactly
that.
what you just said.
What I said
you
was
said
that
no one's
college
protecting them.
presidents have failed to truly protect African American students on these predominantly white campuses too.
So we're talking about a college
And they
campuses in
can
America
stop it before they become victimized.
that have created safe spaces that don't allow white people in because white presence is
I
a threat.
disagree with that.
Okay, well, I mean, but you're also in the same thing. You disagree with it. You know it's occurring. You're talking about how black
But
students are being protected.
I'm not sure
And the
that's
ar-
really
and the
occurring
truth
on
is,
black campuses for the reason that they want to exclude white people. A lot of these black students are so outnumbered on these predominantly white campuses, they feel that they can only come together in small numbers in private and speak about their experiences without retaliation. Having white folks in the room will go back and tell what they're talking about.
Any white person retaliating against black person for race on a college campus in America is immediately expelled.
I disagree with
You are
that.
painting a
That's
false
not
portrait
true.
of America.
That's not true.
And it's that portrait
When it
that
goes
allows,
public, they're
and
expelled.
and it is that
when it goes
portrait,
public,
and it's
they're
that-
expelled.
and
But
it's-
if they can sweep it under the rug and there's no video for it to go public,
and is that portrait
it's a slap on the wrist.
that has allowed all these Jewish students to suffer because they're considered white adjacent, and they've suffered all sorts of racist attacks, hateful attacks, and these presidents
you lost me right
were
there.
silent.
You lost me right there. How does a Jewish person suffer racist attacks?
Well, because it's a race.
Jews are not a race. That's a lie.
I get it. I get
Those who are Jews is a religion of those who follow the religion of Judaism.
it. Okay.
So to be a Jew is a religious
Okay.
belief.
Okay.
When did Jews become a race?
Sorry, bigoted attacks. Is that better?
See,
bigoted
I
attacks.
caught you with that lie.
Well, you don't think they're a race
You've been
of people?
pushing that. Hell no. Are Muslims a race of people?
Hey, I get.
Are Muslims a race
I
of
get
people?
that you hate
Are
Jewish
Christians
people.
a race of people?
I get that you
No,
hate-
I don't hate. I hate lies.
I get that you hate.
I
Jewish
hate
people.
lies.
I
And
get
to
that
be
you
a
hate
Jew
Jewish people.
is to be one who believes in the religion of Judaism.
Okay.
And that's what your faith
Well,
is.
and there are Jewish people that would disagree.
That
right?
they're a race now.
There
So
are
can
Jewish
Muslims
people-
be a race?
I mean, if they all shared the same race,
Man,
and
get the hell
ethnicity,
out of here,
yes.
man. So all Jews share the same ethnicity.
They do not.
So how the hell you gonna make them a race?
But there is targeted hatred directed at those of.
But that ain't got nothing to do with them being a race.
Mizrahi heritage that is considered a race, right?
Dude,
But what,
seriously.
What you're talking about is.
So we're gonna make a religion a race now.
But you are
because of a
parsing-
certain group of people
you are
who
parsing
practice
a
that
word
faith.
and getting mad at something to mask anti-Semitism, which you're completely okay
No,
with.
Charles,
right?
it's
and the
wrong,
truth is,
Charles.
Claudine Gay and the other heads of colleges, heads of university got up there and waffled about it. And it's true, it's time, excuse me, it is time that we find all bigotry intolerable. And you sit here constantly and say things about white people generally. You applaud Jamel Hill saying about white people generally.
The racist, bigoted white people, and right? Millions of them live right here in America.
The truth is that you can't talk about race without condemning people holistically, where we, intelligent people, should be able to talk about individuals and how to fix things, right? And any individual that's okay with Muslim people being treated horribly because they're Muslim, that's wrong, that's bigotry. Jewish people being treated horribly because they're Jewish, that's wrong, that's bigotry. We don't have to tolerate, however, the misogyny just because it's attached to a religion. We don't have to tolerate the implementation of Sharia law because it's attached to a religion. And we don't have to talk about the things that go on in Saudi Arabia, in Iran, in Qatar, and other nations that treat women and people of other religions and races like they're second-class citizens, that they don't have any rights. It's absurd. And we talk, but if you look in the media and they talk about Israel, they talk about, oh, Gaza's an open-air prison, Gaza genocide, despite the fact that before the attack on October 7th, the population of Gaza has doubled in the last 2 decades. You had more hospitals in Gaza than most other Middle Eastern nations have in their whole country. And while there are most certainly some problems, there are things that need to be fixed. But we don't have conversations about it, right? It's just you sit over there and you talk about Jewish people, you talk about white people, you talk about everybody, but
now you're right. I talk about everybody.
No.
But only when I speak about certain groups.
Do you say ugly, horrible things?
Then there's a problem. I don't say anything ugly. I speak the raw, unadulterated truth.
What's the raw, unadulterated?
I speak the facts.
Tell me the raw, unadulterated truth about white people.
Like that lie you just told.
What lie?
About Jews being a race. When they became a race.
Okay.
Because last time I went and checked the racial box, I didn't see Jew.
Okay. So what?
That's exactly what I thought.
Well, let's call it bigotry, right? What you're trying to do is
you're trying to
smokescreen attacks on Jewish students.
Black people in America.
Because you don't like Jewish
people.
Black
people in America are the only race of people in this country, history, that were the victims of approved systematic racism. Approved. To where the Dred Scott decision pointed out by the Supreme Court, where the Dred Scott decision said that no white person in America was legally duty bound to respect the rights of a black person as an equal.
And how long has that
decision? And this came from the United States Supreme Court. How long has that decision
been overturned?
Now, wait a minute, Charles.
How long has that decision been overturned?
There would have never been a need for affirmative action on college campuses had not there been systemic, approved racial discriminatory practices against black people.
Absolutely, no doubt.
So, Charles,
but when does it end? So Quanell,
that's a good question.
When does it end?
When does it end?
Because
that's
right
a very
now,
good question.
in all the Ivy Leagues, all of them, they are majority-minority, which means they're actively discriminating against white applicants.
Hold on, wait a minute.
No.
Wait a minute.
And
who's
the
minority,
Asian population.
Who's minority?
And the Asian.
Who's minority?
Well, it's majority-minority.
Who's the minority?
Well, they don't consider Asians a minority.
All right, so let's look at it.
Okay.
At the Ivy League institutions, the least number of minorities in those schools are black people.
That's not
true.
The
least numbers of minorities. The largest numbers are white females.
White females are not considered minority.
White females are minorities.
Not. All you do
white
is lie.
White females are minorities.
All you
white
do
females
is
are
lie.
minorities.
That's all you do.
Arabs,
you sit up here and you make up stuff.
Latinos.
Just like the media portrays white as evil. Just like it's okay to say white is evil if you're a paid professional. Just like schools discriminate, Ivy League schools
when you look
all
at
discriminate against white applicants.
In America,
and we
state contracts, city contracts, federal contracts, white women economically were considered to be disadvantaged because of white males and racism and bigotry toward them. Well, not racism, but sexism.
Okay. So now sexism isn't real?
They made white women a minority.
Okay.
And they benefited financially greater than black people as a whole.
But not at Ivy League campuses, and that's what we're talking about. And the truth is that what we have
African Americans are the least numbers of the minority student body at those schools, in those Ivy League schools.
Okay, but when you break it down by per capita applications and you look at testing, scores, and grades, African Americans, their admission rates are astronomically higher. Astronomically higher.
So let me ask you this.
So what you're doing is you're just sitting over there and you're lying to the camera
Let me expose the lie right now.
So how about we just have merit? How about people earn their space?
Let me expose the lie right now.
How about we do away with legacy? We do away with buying your way in? We do away with anything but your grades and your involvement.
It doesn't matter anymore. None of that matters anymore.
Well, you're right.
You know why?
Because regular working class white kids are not allowed to go to Ivy League schools
for two reasons, Charles. One, because
just like a white killer is all over the media, but nobody cares if it's someone else.
80% of college graduates, no matter what your color is, what your race is, 80% of them graduate from a college with a degree, don't even get a job in that field anymore and work it for 5 years or more.
Okay.
2, Charles.
So don't go to college?
Charles, with the frightening advancement of artificial intelligence, are these degrees really going to be worth anything?
You want to talk about everything, but actually getting back to
I'm being honest with you, Charles. Answer my question.
Create a fair America.
Answer my question,
What's
Charles.
Your question?
With artificial intelligence and the explosion of it now around the world, because to be honest with you, Charles, our children are not
I'm waiting for a question.
Hold on. Do you believe that our children are academically as smart as they really are claimed to be right now?
Yes.
No, they're not. You know why?
Absolutely.
Because teachers are allowing the kids to use their cell phones in class to get answers.
There are plenty.
Come on, Charles. Don't even read books no more, Charles. Research on your cell phone now.
See, that's
in class.
They're
researching in class on the damn cell phones.
You sound like an old
now,
man
Charles.
talking about these kids today. Look, there
Charles,
are brilliant
they can't
minds.
even write a damn sentence,
There
man.
are brilliant minds. And it's all about, kids that aren't performing, it's because they didn't have a household where parents were pushing them to perform.
True.
That's it.
But artificial intelligence, Charles, is about to eradicate the value of college degrees.
I disagree. At some point, we've already become a nation of professionals, a nation that produces hardly anything. But AI is not.
A nation of consumers.
There's always going to be jobs. And you know what? Either you.
But who are we going to work for?
You either get all
who
the
Who are we going to work for?
Hey, or you fall off and do nothing. You work for yourself.
Or
build your own
robots.
legacy. I doubt it.
I'm working for robots.
You're looking like Wall-E. We're going to float around in chairs and just eat and get fat and do
Charles,
nothing.
When they become self-aware and self-conscious, okay.
All right. Terminator, where's that? Terminator 10, right here, Fox FaceOff.
And your degree ain't going to be worth a damn thing when that happens.
Hey, it's made me plenty of money today.
That's you old folk.